Okay, last time we created a small region of space with a few star systems for our player to explore in the cube quest. I didn't explain at the time, but I also added some procedural star systems. If a sector has a procedural star system, that tells the procedural system to generate planets, and also that all planets in the system can have procedurally placed anomalies. By default, a procedural star system also generates the central star, but you can turn this off if you wanted to have placed the star manually. So our new region might have something defined as a result of these procedural star systems, but it obviously won't have anything related to our story since we haven't created any content for this region yet. So let's create a few item artifacts. I've already created a few item images in Blender and then cropped them in Photoshop. The game expects every item to have a PNG image with the name set to the item ID in the sprites images subfolder of your story. Here I'm just going to copy the same image twice for each. And separately, I've already created some anomaly images in View to sort of, and these are going to be the anomaly images where the player gets the item. Got some other. I did another video explaining how I create the anomaly images, which is kind of beyond the scope of this video series. So each item that the player is going to get has an anomaly image. And we'll be showing those, how we create those anomalies shortly. But before we go on, this next step is not 100% necessary, but for performance reasons, it's better if every image has a thumbnail version so the game can load that small version until the full-sized image is needed. This will speed up first-time launch and reduces the memory footprint. So to do that, in the tool, we open up the Lua console and say create thumbnails, and then the name of our story. Let's see, hopefully that works. There we go. So if we go back to the folder, we can see that small versions of our anomalies and items have been created. Okay, now to create the actual items, we go to the Items and Discoveries tool and choose New Item from the menu, give it the same ID to match the image, and I'm going to create 3 items with different names but give them all the same description and analysis text. If this were a real story, I would try to come up with unique descriptions for each. Probably wouldn't be a terrible idea to add a clone function for the items, but maybe I'll get to that at some point. Okay. Save our story. Okay, let's create some anomalies to give the player these items. So we're going to create a new anomaly. The desert first. And incidentally, in your story settings, if you have dependencies, these are the other stories that in the current context the game knows about. So for example, it's showing me any anomaly image that I can include from any anomalies in those stories. But for ours, we want to use the desert cube that we created, and we're going to place it manually, so this is not strictly necessary, but I think it's a good idea to do that. And the soundscape is sort of the ambient background noise. It's pretty subtle, but kind of gives a little bit of flavor to the anomaly. So I'm going to choose some wind. Maybe give a desert wind. And then maybe, all right, seems to be a little bit of a bug there. We'll ignore that for now. So let's create our anomaly. It across 2 screens. And we want to give the player the item. Give item quest.cube1. Okay, let's test that out. Okay, yeah, so and you can see that because we had, so in the editor here, we can execute Lua code, and this is the command for giving the player an item, and the this particular detail you don't really need to know in general, but basically what the dialogue tree does is it sort of pays attention to the state of the player at the start of a dialogue node interaction, and then it detected that they had gained an item, and so it was able to show that that item had been added to their inventory on that screen. So we need a couple more anomalies. And again, I'm being very uncreative here because this is just a demonstration quest in this, so we're just going to change that to icy landscape. Give the player that item. Some different wind. And we did not get our item. Why did that happen? Give item. Oh. There we go. And one more anomaly. Okay, I think this is a good time to talk about one of the big challenges in creating content for an open world game. Here, let me finish this anomaly before I finish that thought. Let's see. Okay. You might be thinking that it would be better if the items or anomalies had some text, like we've found a second cube, very much like the first, sort of give a sense that the game or the characters are aware of what's been going on. The problem here is that we don't know what order the player will find the anomalies because of how we laid out the region. They'll probably find them in a certain order, but we can't be sure. Particularly if, say, this region were placed at the start of the game at a particular location the player was expected or could stumble upon it, then they might come at it from any direction. There's multiple ways to handle this. We could simply decide that we don't care, and the text will be awkward if we find them in the wrong order. Not ideal unless you're very confident that they will usually find it in a particular order. We could also include secondary logic in the anomalies. So we could do something like this. and then add logic in the condition here. So in this case, if this first node would be shown if the cube found flag had not been set, and then you just make sure that all of the anomalies set the cube found flag, and then you'd have to do this for each anomaly. So that's one solution, and it's perfectly valid depending on the design that you're going for, particularly if you want to give more information depending upon what the player has found, or you want to give a little bit of text, textual color, or perhaps different choices. That's totally valid. But I think for this case, what we're going to do is avoid mentioning anything about whether or not the player has seen the cube in the anomaly text, but let crew members comment on it. So in order to do that, we're going to go in and add logic to all of them. So that each time they find a cube, we're going to increment a mission variable. Okay, and we're going to come back to that shortly. Before we add that mission logic, we first want to add these anomalies to our region. There's our region there. No. There we go. And let's see. So we have a desert cube. That looks like a good desert planet there. And we're going to set its anomaly to desert cube. Quickly test our region, make sure that that's just verifying that it's doing what we want. Okay, and we need a rocky. Let's see. And an ice one. Now, going back to our mission, as you may remember, Captain Dolson tells the player about this new region. The region is added to the universe, and the player is given the gateway coordinates. You can add a region to the world as soon as the story is bootstrapped, but it is important to keep in mind how this is going to impact your story design if the player just stumbled upon it on their own. In any case, we wanted to have our crew comment on the discovery of these items, so it feels like the command crew has an awareness of what's going on and also give the player some guidance. So, in the anomalies, we adjusted the, let's go back to check one out, this variable. So by default, all values are 0, even undefined ones. So we'll be able to check this to tell when the player has found any cube, because each anomaly increments this. So as soon as the value is greater than 0, we know that they've acquired a cube, even if we don't know what order they did it in. So let's go back to our mission. And let's see. So this is our cube mission. And we definitely want this one to be in a separate lane, because the order is kind of unrelated to this. Well, we kind of know that it's going to be after this, but it's going to give us more flexibility if just the tracking of this happens in its own lane. So check mission value. Is at least one. And I'm going to put a little bit of a delay so that the crew member doesn't comment instantly during the anomaly. Incidentally, the real-time flag, if you set that, it means that once 3 seconds elapse in real time, whether or not the game is paused or during an anomaly, this will trigger. So if you want something to happen, say for example during an interaction with the station, then you might turn this on. But if you want to just sort of have time that is passed while they are exploring space, then you leave this unchecked. I'm going to add a crew comment. Skill notification. Let's have engineering make the comment. Let's add another one after. Okay. All right, load our test mission. Okay, we're going to test out our mission here. So Dolson should give it to us. Okay, one thing that I do notice now is that it's a little bit incorrect that he's commenting on information that we learn when we analyze it. So we could change the mission logic so that we increment the value after the players analyze it rather than inside the anomaly. We could change the timing of his response, or we could change the wording so that he was just simply commenting on the fact that this might be a heretic artifact, like Captain Dolson said, but I'm not going to bother to do that for this right now. But that's just the sort of thing that that's just very normal for me to discover while working on a mission design. Just noticing things as I test them and making adjustments to correct for things that don't seem right. Let's see, where was that? Given his second comment, so the player is given some information that maybe they're kind of like this is relating to a quest, but analyze that. But our current quest doesn't have any information on that, so the next thing we want to do is add some details that will allow us to give the player a hint that they're supposed to be collecting these items. Let's see. Okay, so once the player has found one and engineering officer has commented on it. We're going to add a mission detail. Mission detail. It's not a goal. Set the max progress to 3. So this will add an entry to the mission mission detail, and it will show that it's a multi-step detail, and then we're going to also immediately advance it because the player will already have 1 of 3. And we're going to copy that action, paste it into here so that when they find the next one, they get that. And then copy that node. Okay, so I think in a normal mission there'd be a little bit more detail at the end, maybe some conversation and so forth, and some other reward. But at this point, I'm just going to mark the mission done once the player has found all 3 cubes. Okay, I think that's a good place to break for now. I haven't covered all of the areas of the tool, and definitely there are a lot of parts, particularly of the mission system, where there's a lot of details that I could go into with the different conditions and actions. But I want to wait and see. I've sent out some invites to players to try out the tool, and I want to see if this format of video is actually the best way to communicate information on how to use it. Okay, so thanks for watching.